Now, there is a huge new update in the murder trial of Luigi Mangione, man accused of killing UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson in December of last year in New York City. On Tuesday, Judge Gregary Carro actually threw out the terrorism charges against Mangione. So those charges were absolutely ridiculous in my view. Um, I mean, yes, he allegedly shot and killed a man, okay? Targeted this specific person. Now, that is not terrorism. It's murder, yes, not terrorism. In fact, this alleged killer went out of his way to avoid any civilian casualties. That is not terrorism. Judge Carro said that the two most serious charges, murder in the first degree as a crime of terrorism, and a second degree charge related to terrorism, were not proven by the prosecution's case as presented to the grand jury. He said that just because Mangione may have been motivated by ideological opposition to the for profit healthcare industry, that does not de facto make it terrorism under New York statutes. Quote, while the defendant was clearly expressing an animus towards UHC and the healthcare industry generally, it does not follow that his goal was to intimidate and coerce a civilian population, and indeed, there was no evidence presented of such a goal. Look, I can't disagree with that. Calling this murder, which it was, an act of terrorism, which it wasn't. I mean, I believe the terrorism charges were a political decision that was meant to try to clamp down on any criticism of the for profit healthcare industry, criticism that erupted after this murder. Okay. I believe that in doing so, prosecutors wanted to chill any discussion about the abuses of the healthcare industry, specifically what UHC had engaged in. Remember, this company under Thompson used an AI model to decide which claims that they would approve and disapprove. And no shocker, they actually had the highest claim denial rate in the entire industry. About a third of all the claims were automatically denied. But it got worse. In fact, when it came to Medicare Advantage plans, nearly 90% of them were automatically denied. Now, remember, if Medicare Advantage, these are people basically who are elderly or disabled, okay, who need those medications or those procedures. And you know what would happen? They would often die as a result of all these automatic denials. Denials that they could not fight, either because they may not have had the mental faculties to be able to fight them, or the money, or the physical ability to spend hours a day on the phone challenging these denials. They might have been too sick. And these denials were also that the company, the executives, including Mr. Thompson, could make even more of a profit. Remember, every single denial means more money in the executives and shareholders' pockets. Now, I am not saying that murder is the appropriate response. No. But let's be clear. This is what happened as a result of a system that causes the deaths of countless people. Okay? And so, look, over 60,000 Americans a year die from lack of health care. And you have so many people who have insurance, who play by the rules, who pay their premiums every single month. As premiums, by the way, continue to rise and take more of a bite out of people's limited resources. Okay? And then you add in things like deductibles, co-pays, and insurance no longer covering certain procedures. And then the automatic denials. Okay? What happened here is that this was a murder for a purpose. Is it wrong to murder people? Yes. But that does not make it terrorism. Terrorism has a very explicit meaning in the law, and it is defined by the unlawful use of violence or threat of violence to intimidate or coerce a civilian population or a government in order to achieve political, social, or ideological goals. The key elements of terrorism include a systematic use of violence, a clear ideological motivation, a desire to create widespread fear, and the intent to influence government policy or achieve social objectives. This case does not fit that. The target was not a member of the government, nor was he trying to create fear in the civilian population. In fact, according to Mangione's alleged writings, okay, and this is an October diary entry, okay, saying, quote, "The investor conference is a true windfall. It embodies everything wrong with our health system, and most importantly, the message becomes self-evident. The problem with most revolutionary acts is that the message is lost on normies. That message is why, according to the writings, he didn't use something like a bomb. He said bombers commit an atrocity whose horror either outweighs the impact of their message or whose distance from their message prevents normies from connecting the dots. Do you bomb the HQ? No. Bombs equal terrorism. Such actions appear the unjustified anger of someone who simply got sick / had bad luck and took their frustration out in the insurance industry, while recklessly endangering countless employees. Instead of carrying out a bombing, targeting the CEO at a conference is, quote, targeted, precise, and doesn't risk innocence." So, in these own alleged writings, he writes about going after Thompson for his actions in making the insurance industry worse for the public. This isn't trying to scare the public or create fear in the public. It's, in his own way, trying to be an advocate for the public. Again, I think it's the wrong way to do it because I abhor violence, but at the same time, I think that was the motivation there. To go after someone who was making insurance worse, who was actively hurting people, and to start a conversation on the greed of the industry itself and those who profit off of that greed. Again, this is not exactly what you would call terrorism, because the stated goal was not to coerce through fear the government or the public to make these changes. He didn't even advocate for Medicare for all or a solution. He was just pointing out that, hey, this is how the system works. That murder, I think, was to drive attention to the actions of UHC and Thompson and the industry at large. Charging Mangione with terrorism is a way to distract from that message and to put the focus on the alleged killer and away from looking at the horrific practices of the industry that kill tens of thousands of people a year through legitimate claim denials. Murder, as I said, is wrong. You can murder someone just as easily with a pen and a health insurance denial as you can with a gun. Actually, you can do it a lot easier, and it's legal through our system, even though that is actually violence in my mind. Yes, denying people's legitimate claims and allowing them to die, or just allowing people to die from lack of health care, is, to me, violence. So, now this is also, by the way, why the federal government is pushing for the death penalty. They want to send a message because they are owned by the owner donors. They're owned by the system. Okay? But at the moment, doesn't look like their case is going as well as they hoped. At least with regards to the terrorism charges, because we all know those were ridiculous. Not only that, but look at the absurd optics of the perp walk, okay, that they had back when he was arrested and brought into New York. Okay? Just an absolute ridiculous, perp walk with all these armed police officers walking around with their weapons as if Mangione was a clear and present danger to everyone around him. No. Look, at the end of the day, obviously we're going to have to see what happens with the jury. I mean, I'm not saying nullification is on the table, but perhaps it is. But we're going to have to see what happens based on the evidence presented. But it is good to see that the most ridiculous charges in this case have been rightly dropped. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.